My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was a text from my Aunt Susan. "I always knew you were selfish, Mark, but this, leaving your sister to drown while your father is dying, you are no nephew of mine." I stared at the screen, a half-poured cup of coffee turning cold in my hand. My heart did a weird, slow thud in my chest. I didn't know what she was talking about. I quickly unlocked my phone and saw that I had 14 missed calls, 22 unread text messages, and a barrage of Facebook notifications. My stomach dropped. I opened Facebook and there it was, sitting at the very top of my feed, practically glowing with self-righteous indignation. It was a post from my younger sister Chloe. She had tagged 20 different family members. The post read, "It breaks my heart to make this public, but I am out of options. For the last 2 years, I have been the sole caregiver for our father as he battles early onset dementia. I have sacrificed my youth, my career, and my mental health to keep him comfortable in his own home. And what has my brother Mark done? He has completely walked away. He cut off his financial support, locked me out of Dad's accounts, and abandoned us. I am drowning in medical bills, trying to figure out how to keep the lights on, while Mark sits in his luxury apartment in the city. Please pray for Dad and me. We're going to need a miracle to survive this." Attached was a carefully curated black and white photo of Chloe holding our father's frail, wrinkled hand. She had a single perfect tear rolling down her cheek. The comments were a bloodbath. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were calling me a monster. Family friends were offering to start a GoFundMe for her. My uncle called me a disgrace to the family name. I stood there in my kitchen, reading the comments one by one. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone. Instead, I felt a cold, hard knot of absolute clarity form in my chest. I walked over to my home office desk. Sitting right in the center of the mahogany wood was a thick, blue 3-ring binder. I had spent the last 72 hours compiling it. Inside were printed bank statements, credit card bills, ATM security photos, and a massive spreadsheet. Chloe didn't know I had the binder. She didn't know that I had spent the weekend auditing our father's finances. She didn't know that I had found out exactly where Dad's $5,200 monthly pension had been going for the last 14 months. And she definitely didn't know that I was about to nuke her entire life. To understand how we got to this point, you need to understand the dynamic between me and my sister. I am 32. Chloe is 28. Growing up in a middle-class suburb just outside of Indianapolis, our roles were assigned early on, and they were non-negotiable. I was the workhorse. I was expected to get good grades, get a sensible job, and take care of my own problems. I rarely asked for money, and when I did, I was met with lectures about fiscal responsibility. I ended up getting a degree in supply chain management and working my way up the corporate ladder at a logistics firm in Chicago. I made good money, but I worked 50-hour weeks to get it. I lived a quiet, structured life. Chloe, on the other hand, was the golden child. She was creative, spontaneous, and fiercely protected by both of our parents. When I crashed my first car at 17, I had to work night shifts at a grocery store to pay for the repairs. When Chloe totaled her brand new Jetta at 19 because she was texting, my dad bought her a Honda Civic the very next week so she wouldn't have to take the bus. She never really launched into adulthood. She went to college for a year, dropped out because she said the vibe was too toxic, and decided to become a freelance photographer and lifestyle influencer. This essentially meant she took photos of avocado toast and complained about how hard it was to build a personal brand. She lived in a trendy apartment downtown, heavily subsidized by the bank of Dad. Our mother passed away from breast cancer 5 years ago. It devastated all of us, but it absolutely broke my father. Arthur was a quiet, stoic man who had worked as a mechanical engineer for 35 years. Without my mom to guide him, he just sort of deflated. He retired, collected his very generous corporate pension, and spent most of his days puttering around his 4-bedroom house, watching history documentaries and gardening. 2 years ago, things started getting weird. It started with small things. He would forget where he parked his car at the grocery store. He would call me and ask me the same question 3 times in a 10-minute conversation. Then, the real warning signs hit. He left the stove on and nearly burned the kitchen down. He got lost driving to the local hardware store he had been visiting for 2 decades and was brought home by the police. The diagnosis was Lewy body dementia. It's a brutal, unforgiving disease. The doctor told us that his cognitive decline would be progressive and that he would eventually need full-time care. I immediately drove down from Chicago, and Chloe and I sat at the dining room table with Dad to figure out a plan. Dad was still lucid enough to express his wishes. He was terrified of going into a nursing home. He begged us, with tears in his eyes, to let him stay in the house he and my mother had built. "We can make it work," Chloe had said, leaning over to hold his hand. "I can move back in, Dad. I work from home anyway. I can be here with you." I was skeptical. Chloe had never taken care of anyone but herself, but I lived 3 hours away, and my job required me to be in the office most days. I couldn't uproot my life, and I felt immense guilt about it. "If you do this, Chloe," I said, "I'll make sure you have whatever you need, but this is a massive responsibility." He's going to need structure, medication management, and constant supervision. I know, Mark, she snapped, rolling her eyes. I'm not a child. I love Dad just as much as you do. Probably more, since I'm the one actually giving up my freedom to be here. We hashed out the financials. Dad had a corporate pension that brought in $5,200 a month after taxes, plus his Social Security, which was about $1,900. His mortgage was only $1,200. Property taxes and insurance were low, and his basic living expenses shouldn't have exceeded $1,500. He had a surplus of thousands of dollars every month. Because Dad was already struggling with numbers, we agreed that Chloe would take over his day-to-day finances. I helped set up a joint account for her and Dad. His pension and Social Security would deposit directly into it. Chloe was supposed to use that money to pay the mortgage, utilities, buy groceries, and cover any of his medical copays. She would live in the house rent-free, and any of her personal expenses she would cover through her photography business. The money Dad brings in will easily cover everything he needs, I said, looking over the budget spreadsheet I had printed out. But if there's ever a shortfall, or if he needs out-of-pocket medical equipment, you call me immediately. I will cover it. For the first 6 months, everything seemed fine. I drove down 2 weekends a month to visit. The house was reasonably clean. Dad seemed happy enough, and Chloe was always eager to show me the organic, grass-fed meals she was supposedly cooking for him. But then, Dad's condition deteriorated. He started wandering at night. He became incontinent. He needed help bathing and dressing. It became too much for one person, let alone someone with zero medical training. I hired a private in-home nurse named Maria. She was a godsend. She came in Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. She bathed Dad, managed his complex medication schedule, did light physical therapy with him, and kept him engaged. Because Maria was an out-of-pocket expense not covered by Medicare, she cost $3,200 a month. I called Chloe to discuss paying for it out of Dad's surplus. Mark, there isn't a surplus. Chloe sighed heavily into the phone. Inflation is insane right now. Do you know how much groceries cost and gas? Plus, Dad needs specialized dietary supplements, and the utilities on this big house are skyrocketing. His pension barely covers the mortgage and keeping us alive. If you want a fancy private nurse, you're going to have to pay for it. I felt a twinge of suspicion. Even with inflation, $7,100 a month was a lot of money for 2 adults living in a paid-down house. But I didn't want to argue. Dad needed the care. I made a very comfortable 6-figure salary, had no kids, and lived below my means. I could afford it. Fine, I told her. I'll pay Maria's agency directly from my account. Just make sure you're keeping up with the house and keeping Dad comfortable when she's not there. So for the next 8 months, I transferred $3,200 out of my checking account every single month to pay for Dad's nurse. I tightened my own belt. I skipped a vacation to Europe. I put off buying a new car. I didn't mind. It was for my dad. The real trouble started 4 weeks ago. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was in the middle of a quarterly budget review meeting at work when my cell phone rang. It was Maria, the nurse. She had strict instructions only to call me during business hours in an absolute emergency. I stepped out of the glass-walled conference room and took the call in the hallway. Maria, what's wrong? Is Dad okay? Mr. Mark, she said, her voice tight and worried. Arthur is physically fine, but I needed to speak with you. I am very concerned about the situation here at the house. What's going on? I don't like to overstep, sir, she hesitated, but there is no food in the house. I went to make Arthur his lunch, and the refrigerator is completely empty. There is a half-empty bottle of spoiled milk, some condiments, and a rotting cucumber. The pantry just has some stale crackers. I frowned. Did you ask Chloe? Maybe she hasn't gone grocery shopping yet this week. Chloe is not here, Maria replied quietly. She left on Thursday. She said she was going on a brand trip to Mexico and wouldn't be back until next Monday. She left her friend Sarah to watch her father over the weekend, but Sarah told me she barely saw him. Mr. Mark, the water was shut off this morning. I cannot bathe your father. I cannot flush the toilet. I called the utility company and they said the bill hasn't been paid in 4 months. I felt the blood drain from my face. What do you mean the water is shut off? What do you mean Chloe is in Mexico? She has been taking many trips recently, Maria said carefully. And Mr. Mark, I did not want to bring this up, but my agency contacted me yesterday. They said they have not received payment for my weekend overtime hours for the last 2 months. Chloe told me she was handling the overtime invoices. Maria, stay right there, I said, my voice eerily calm. I am leaving Chicago right now. I'll be there in 3 hours. Do whatever you need to do to keep Dad comfortable. Buy bottled water, order food delivery. I will reimburse you. I walked back into the conference room, told my director I had a family emergency, grabbed my laptop bag, and practically ran to my car. The drive down I-65 was a blur of fury and panic. My mind was racing. How could the water be shut off? Dad had over $7,000 coming in every month. Where was the money going? And who the hell leaves a dementia patient to go on a trip to Mexico? When I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, the grass was a foot high. The gutters were overflowing with dead leaves. The The house, which my mother had always kept pristine, looked derelict. I unlocked the front door and was immediately hit by the smell. It wasn't overwhelmingly foul, but it was the distinct smell of neglect, dust, stale air, and something faintly sour. I found Maria in the living room, reading a book aloud to Dad. Dad was sitting in his favorite recliner, wrapped in a blanket. He looked thinner than I remembered. His eyes were vacant, staring somewhere past Maria's shoulder. "Dad?" I said softly. He blinked, slowly turning his head. It took a few seconds for the recognition to filter through the fog in his brain. "Mark? My boy. What are you doing home from college?" He thought I was still 19. My heart cracked. I walked over, knelt beside his chair, and hugged him. "Just came to see you, Dad." I looked up at Maria. She looked exhausted. "Thank you for staying, Maria. Really. Can you show me the kitchen?" She led me to the kitchen. It was exactly as she described. The fridge was a wasteland. The sink was piled high with crusty, unwashed dishes. The trash can was overflowing, attracting fruit flies. "The water company came at 10 a.m., Maria explained, pointing to a yellow notice taped to the back door. I ripped the notice off the door. It was a final disconnection warning. "Balance due, 804522. "Okay," I breathed out, trying to keep my temper in check. "I'm going to fix this. Maria, can you stay an extra 2 hours? I need to go to the utility office and the grocery store." "Of course, Mr. Mark." I drove to the local municipal building, paid the outstanding water bill with my own credit card, plus the $150 reconnection fee. I then went to the supermarket and bought $300 worth of groceries. When I got back, the water was running again. I tipped Maria an extra $200 in cash and sent her home. Then, I sat down at Dad's old desktop computer in the den. I needed to see the accounts. When we originally set up the joint checking account for Dad and Chloe, I had made sure my name was listed as a secondary signer, just in case of an emergency. I had never logged into the online portal because I wanted to respect their privacy and I trusted my sister. I found Dad's old notebook of passwords in the desk drawer. It took me 3 tries, but I finally logged into the regional bank's online portal. The main dashboard loaded. Checking account balance, $42,118, 6 myors. Savings account balance, $5, 6 myors. I stared at the screen, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. Dad's pension had just deposited 4 days ago, $5,200, plus his Social Security. Where was it? I clicked on the transaction history. What I saw over the next 3 hours made me physically nauseous. I exported the last 12 months of statements into an Excel spreadsheet. I sat there in the quiet, dusty house, the glow of the monitor illuminating the horrifying reality of what my sister had done. There were no grocery store runs for organic food. There were no specialized medical supplements. Instead, the bank statements read like the diary of a wealthy socialite. Delta Airlines, C. Taller Airlines, Sephora, 4 Trinitines, TTEs, Louis Vuitton, Chicago, 2T400, Eats, Uber Eats, of Uber Eats, hundreds of dollars a week. Airbnb Tulum, 6 Revolve Clothing, $600, $600 the aesthetic dermatology, Botox fillers, $850. She was bleeding him dry. She wasn't just skimming a little off the top for gas money, she was treating his pension and Social Security like her own personal trust fund. Every single month, the moment the 70100 dropped into the account, it was systematically drained by exorbitant lifestyle purchases. But it got worse. I started digging into the actual bills. I found the pile of mail shoved into a drawer in the kitchen. The mortgage, 3 months past due. Pre-foreclosure notices were mixed in with the junk mail. The property taxes, delinquent. The home insurance, canceled due to non-payment. If there had been a fire in the house tomorrow, Dad would have lost everything. If the bank initiated foreclosure, my father, who had worked 35 years to pay off this house, would be thrown onto the street. And all the while, I was paying $3,200 a month out of my own pocket for the only actual care he was receiving, while Chloe was getting lip injections and partying in Mexico. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table drinking black coffee, printing out every single bank statement, every past due notice, every flight receipt. I went to an office supply store the next morning, bought a heavy-duty hole puncher and a blue 3-ring binder. I organized everything chronologically. I highlighted the luxury purchases in bright neon pink. I highlighted the bounced utility checks in yellow. I built a financial murder weapon. Chloe came back on Monday afternoon. I was sitting on the living room sofa when she walked through the front door dragging a hard-shell Rimowa suitcase behind her. She looked incredibly tan, wearing designer sunglasses and a flowing linen outfit. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw me. "Mark, what are you doing here?" she asked, a flicker of genuine surprise crossing her face, quickly replaced by annoyance. "You didn't say you were coming down." "Maria called me," I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. "She said the water was shut off." Chloe let out a dramatic, performative sigh, rolling her eyes and leaving her suitcase in the hallway. The utility company is so incompetent. I mailed that check weeks ago. The mail system here is a joke. I'm going to have to call them and scream at someone." "You didn't mail a check, Chloe," I said, standing up. Because there wasn't any money in the account to cover it. She froze. The casual, annoyed persona dropped for a fraction of a second, but she quickly recovered. What are you talking about? Of course there's money. Things are just tight right now because of all of Dad's hidden expenses. Speaking of which, you need to talk to Maria. She's getting way too demanding. I logged into the bank account, Chloe. Silence fell over the room. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. You did what? She whispered, her face flushing red. You spied on me? You violated my privacy? I violated your privacy? It's Dad's money. I raised my voice for the first time, taking a step toward her. I spent the weekend doing a forensic audit of the last year. Would you like to explain to me how Dad's hidden expenses include a $2,000 Louis Vuitton bag, or Botox, or an Airbnb in Tulum? You don't understand. She suddenly shrieked, instantly pivoting to the victim role. You have no idea what it's like. I am trapped in this depressing house all day with a man who doesn't even know my name half the time. It is mentally destroying me. I have no life. I had to give up my youth for him. You're not even here half the time, I yelled back. Maria is doing the work. I'm paying Maria. And you're stealing from a dying man to fund your Instagram aesthetic. It's caregiver compensation, she screamed, tears now streaming down her face. I deserve that money. Mom would have wanted me to have it. You sit in your fancy city apartment making six figures, judging me? You're a heartless bastard. The house is in pre-foreclosure, Chloe, I said, dropping my voice back to a deadly quiet tone. The insurance is canceled. You haven't paid the property taxes. You were going to let him lose his home. That finally shut her up. She stared at me, her chest heaving, the realization dawning on her that there was no lying her way out of this one. The receipts were too loud. Pack your things, I told her. What? Pack your things? You're leaving. Today. I have an appointment with a family law attorney tomorrow morning. I am filing for emergency financial guardianship and full medical power of attorney. If you try to fight me, or if you refuse to leave this house, I will take these bank statements to the police and file elder abuse and fraud charges against you. You will go to a federal prison, Chloe. Do you understand me? She looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. She didn't apologize. She didn't show remorse for Dad. She was just furious. She got caught. Without another word, she stomped upstairs. For the next 2 hours, I listened to her slamming drawers and throwing things into garbage bags. When she finally came downstairs, lugging 3 massive suitcases, she paused at the front door. You're dead to me, she spat. You're going to regret this, Mark. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are. She slammed the door so hard the framed photos in the hallway rattled. I spent the next 2 days dealing with the legal fallout. The attorney was horrified when I showed him the binder. We immediately filed the paperwork. I took the documents to the bank, officially removed Chloe from the accounts, and locked down his credit. I paid the past due mortgage balance out of my own savings to stop the foreclosure process. I arranged for Dad to be transferred to a highly rated, specialized memory care facility located just 20 minutes from my apartment in Chicago. The facility cost $8,000 a month. Between his pension, his Social Security, and my contribution, we could afford it, and he would have 24/7 professional care. He wouldn't be neglected. I was exhausted. I thought the worst was over. I thought the cancer had been excised. That brings us back to today, to my kitchen counter, to the buzzing phone and the Facebook notification. Chloe had made good on her threat. Instead of slinking away in shame, she had gone on the offensive. She had spun a masterful, emotionally manipulative narrative, painting herself as the martyred saint of a daughter who had been cruelly evicted and cut off by her greedy, rich, absentee brother. She didn't mention the missing money. She didn't mention the LV bags. She claimed I had swooped in, locked the accounts to steal the inheritance, and kicked her out onto the street. My family bought it hook, line, and sinker. Aunt Susan called me a monster. Uncle Dave texted me saying Dad would be ashamed of me. My cousin Sarah posted on her own feed about how corporate greed destroys families. They were setting up a GoFundMe for Chloe's living expenses. She had already raised $1,200 from sympathetic high school friends and distant relatives. I sat at my desk, looking at the blue binder. I had originally planned to keep this quiet. I didn't want to air our family's dirty laundry in public. I figured stripping her of access and kicking her out was punishment enough. I wanted to protect Dad's dignity, but Chloe had forced my hand. She wanted a public trial. She wanted the court of public opinion. Fine. I opened the binder. I took out my phone and began snapping high-resolution photos of the bank statements. I used a digital blackout tool on my phone to redact Dad's account numbers and any sensitive identifying information. But I left the names of the merchants crystal clear. I left the dates crystal clear. I left the amounts crystal clear. I took photos of the final disconnection notice from the water company. I took a photo of the pre-foreclosure notice from the bank. I spent 20 minutes composing my Facebook post. I wanted it to be clinical, emotionless, and devastating. I clicked Create Post. Since my sister Chloe has decided to make our family's private tragedy a public spectacle, I feel it is my duty to provide the full, unfiltered truth. Chloe has not been cut off because I'm greedy. Chloe has been removed from our father's home and his financial accounts because, over the last 14 months, she has systematically embezzled over $50,000 of his pension and Social Security. I attached 32 photos to the post. Attached are the redacted bank statements. You will notice that while my father's water was being shut off due to non-payment, Chloe was charging $1,800 Airbnb in Tulum to his account. You will notice that while his mortgage went into pre-foreclosure, she was buying 2,400 Louis Vuitton bags. You will notice that there is zero money spent on his groceries or medical care. That is because I have personally been paying $3,200 a month out of my own pocket for his private nurse Maria, who was the only one actually caring for him. I kept typing, the anger flowing out of my fingers and into the keyboard. To Aunt Susan, Uncle Dave, and anyone else who felt the need to attack me today without asking for my side of the story, your apologies are not required, but your silence going forward is heavily suggested. To anyone who donated to Chloe's GoFundMe, I strongly advise you to request a chargeback from your credit card company, as you are funding a fraudster. Dad is currently safe. He is being moved to a specialized memory care facility near me in Chicago, where he will receive the 24/7 care he deserves, funded safely by his pension, which is now legally protected. I have handed these documents over to an attorney, and we are exploring criminal charges for elder abuse and fraud. Do not contact me regarding this matter again. I tagged every single person Chloe had tagged. I tagged Aunt Susan, I tagged Uncle Dave, and then I hit post. I didn't turn my phone off. I left it on the desk with the volume turned all the way up, and I went to the kitchen to finally pour myself a fresh cup of coffee. It took exactly 4 minutes for the first notification to come through, then another, then 5, then 20. My phone began to vibrate violently against the mahogany wood, a continuous, unrelenting buzz. I walked back over and looked at the screen. The GoFundMe link on Chloe's page was suddenly broken. It had been taken down. Cousin Sarah had deleted her post about my corporate greed. Aunt Susan had sent a text message. It just read, "Mark, oh my God, is this real? The Louis Vuitton?" I didn't reply. Instead, I watched in real time as the comments on Chloe's original post shifted from overwhelming support to absolute vitriolic outrage. The same people who had called me a monster 5 minutes ago were now demanding answers from her. "Chloe, what is this? Did you seriously use Arthur's pension for Botox while his water got shut off? You need to refund my donation RIGH now." 10 minutes later, Chloe deleted her entire Facebook post. 20 minutes after that, her entire Facebook profile disappeared. She deactivated her Instagram too. The lifestyle influencer had gone completely dark. My Uncle Dave called me. I let it go to voicemail. He left a 3-minute message, his voice cracking, apologizing profusely, saying he had no idea, that she had manipulated them all, that he felt sick to his stomach. I didn't care about their apologies. They had shown their true colors. They were ready to believe the worst of me based on a single teary-eyed photograph. Over the next few weeks, the dust settled. Dad's move to the memory care facility in Chicago went as well as could be expected. The transition was hard on him at first. He was confused and agitated in the new environment, but the staff there were incredible. They were trained professionals, gentle and patient. Within a month, he had settled into a routine. He had regular meals, social activities, and proper medical monitoring. I visit him every Wednesday evening after work and every Sunday morning. Most days, he doesn't know my name. He thinks I'm a friendly neighbor, or sometimes a guy he used to work with at the engineering firm. It hurts deeply, but at least I know he's safe, he's clean. He's not living in a dark house with no running water while his daughter lives it up in Mexico. As for Chloe, the legal gears are grinding slowly, as they always do. My attorney advised me that pursuing criminal charges for familial elder financial abuse is notoriously difficult, especially since Dad's cognitive state means he can't testify that he didn't gift her the money. But the threat of a civil suit was enough to force a settlement. Chloe had to sign over her remaining 50% equity stake in Dad's house to me as restitution for the stolen funds. We are selling the house in Indiana next month, and 100% of the proceeds will go directly into an irrevocable trust designed solely to fund Dad's care facility for the rest of his life. Chloe didn't show up to the closing. She signed the papers electronically from somewhere out of state. I heard through the family grapevine that she's living on a friend's couch in Florida, working as a hostess at a chain restaurant because her freelance photography business dried up when she couldn't afford to buy followers anymore. She hasn't called to ask how Dad is doing, not once. Aunt Susan and Uncle Dave try to text me on holidays, sending cheerful "Merry Christmas" or "Happy Thanksgiving" gifs, pretending like they didn't publicly accuse me of leaving my father to die. I leave them on read. My circle has gotten incredibly small, but it's peaceful. Sometimes when I'm sitting in the visiting room at the facility, watching Dad try to solve a simple jigsaw puzzle, I think about that blue binder sitting in my desk drawer. I think about the sheer audacity of my sister's lie. She thought she could control the narrative because she was the loudest, the most dramatic, the most visible. She thought her tears would outweigh my silence. But she forgot one fundamental rule about the real world, the world outside of her curated social media bubbles. Tears can manipulate emotions, but receipts manipulate reality, and my receipts were undeniable.